Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case I'm going to be looking into today is a big one. It has been in the news recently. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. I've had a couple of requests to actually do it now, and it took me a while to research. It just, with everything coming out constantly all the time, it did take quite a while to get all the information together. And then you think you've got it all and you can record, and then something new comes out. So yeah, it's just been a while to do this one, let's just say. It is the case of Gabby Petito. Again, it has been suggested by a couple of you guys. I believe Brittany and Ellie are the two that I can think off the top of my head. So let's just get into the case. Gabrielle Venora Petito was born on the 19th of March in 1999 in Blue Point Island, New York, to parents Joseph and Nicole. Now, they had another child together, which was her younger brother TJ. But then they did end up eventually getting a divorce. So they split up, they get divorced, and then they find new partners. And so her father found Gabby's stepmother Tara, and they ended up having 2 children together. And then her mother found her stepfather Jim Schmidt, and they ended up having 1 child together. And so that left Gabby the eldest of pretty much 6 children altogether. So obviously a very big family. She was a huge family girl. She absolutely adored her family. She loved all of her siblings, and pretty much it was as if she had 4 parents. That is what has been said, because they just loved her so very much. It wasn't like her step-parents were her step-parents at all, because they were just all one big happy family. Growing up as a little girl, she was really caring, was always just very friendly, and just loved life. She was a happy little girl and was very adventurous and enjoyed nature. It's something that she would carry through to her later life. You know, she absolutely loved nature, loved traveling the world, and wanted to see it all. And that is what inspired her eventually to do van life. She wanted to travel the country in like a van, camper van, something like that, and just see the world, and then build up basically a social media empire from that and blog it all. And that was her dream, to travel the world and just see it all. And I mean, whose dream isn't that? A lot of people have that dream. And she actually got the opportunity at a young age to go and do it for a little while at least, which would have been so amazing for her. Gabby went to Blue Point High School when she was younger, and this is actually where she met a man called Brian Christopher Laundrie. Now, although they did know each other in school, like they knew who each other were, they weren't actually together, they weren't a couple, but they did have quite a lot in common. Brian was very much like a naturist, a survivalist, a minimalist. He was also an environmentalist, so you know, they had a lot of things in common, and traveling and going and seeing the world would have been something that they would have both really enjoyed doing. Gabby graduated in 2017, and she went on to work as a hostess in a restaurant up until 2019. Obviously, Brian and Gabby, I don't know whether they actually kept in touch or whether after school, like a couple of years after school, they actually just sort of randomly saw each other again. But in March of 2019, they ended up going on a date. It was a sushi date on the beach, and that is when they officially began their relationship together. Again, Brian was a survivalist, an environmentalist. He had an adventurous spirit just like Gabby. They had so much in common and got on really well. They really liked each other. I'm not entirely sure the timeline on when this happened, but Gabby actually ended up moving in with Brian's parents, and they lived in their house as a couple together. And Brian's parents said that they adored Gabby and that she was a lovely girl. So his parents were called Christopher and Roberta, Laundrie, and they lived in Florida, and that is where Gabby went to move to. It didn't take the 2 long to be traveling together before they were traveling together. They went on a road trip, driving all around, camping all the way. They went on other trips too, like shorter ones, like weekend trips, things like that. And after that, they decided that they did want to do van life. Now, both of them had Instagram accounts, and they were both posting on there a lot. Obviously, if they're going to see in the world, Instagram is the perfect platform to be posting photos of that and things like that. And she wanted to grow her social media, and so why not? In July of 2020, Brian and Gabby got engaged, and by all accounts, Brian's parents were very pleased at this. So they decided that they wanted to do this van life trip, right? Gabby's working as a nutritionalist at the time, and she's saving up like all the money, so that obviously, not just her, obviously Brian, I assume, did too, but she's saving up money to get enough money and go on this trip. Initially, they did want to do it in 2020, but obviously with COVID and things, everything was just insane at that time. It would have been really difficult for them to do it, and so they just skipped that year, like many of us did. It's like 2020 didn't even happen for most of us. We just pretty much spent a year inside. But they decided that they were going to do it in 2021 instead. So Gabby then quits her job and off they both go. She wanted to be a blogger. She wanted to grow her social media. That's what she wanted to do for a living. And in doing that full time, it would enable her to travel around the country, because you're earning the money off of social media and things like that, and then that allows you to do it all the more, which then gets you more pictures and more followers, etc., and it just spirals from there. And I mean, what a wonderful way to live your life. It's so amazing to be going around seeing all these beautiful sights and earning a living from that. It would just be absolutely amazing to do something like that, to have that opportunity. A lot of people would love to do it. In March of 2021, the couple celebrated Gabby's 22nd birthday. They went up and hiked the Appalachian Trail, and they took some lovely photos there too and put them on Instagram. The next month, Gabby's dad and stepmom decide that they want to be closer to Gabby, and so they move sort of pretty close to Florida. I believe it was only a couple of hours out, if I'm correct in that. So they weren't too far away, and when Gabby and Brian got back from this trip, she was planning her wedding, and it was nice for her to have her family around so that they could help do that. So she was really excited that they had moved closer. The trip was supposed to start in June, I believe, but it didn't end up officially starting until the 2nd of July because something to do with her brother's graduation. So I believe that she wanted to attend that. And this trip they had planned was going to be like a 4-month trip. They were going to travel across country, visit all these different beautiful national parks along the way, camp, and just live out of their van. And then they were going to do a final stop at the end of October in Portland. And I believe that they would have visited a friend's house down there. Although I may be wrong with that. Now, obviously, phone service in certain areas, especially in national parks and things like that, may be a bit difficult to keep in touch with people. And so she just promised her parents that she would keep in touch with them as much as she could, as best as she could, try and ring them all the time. But sometimes she wouldn't be able to, because if she didn't have service, you just can't do it. And of course, she was going to post on social media along the way, try and grow all of that. At the time of her leaving, I believe she had 100,000 followers, and so that is pretty amazing. She wasn't just posting to update her family and friends, she was posting to update the people who were interested in her life and interested in seeing these beautiful things that she was doing. Again, she wanted to be a blogger, and she had started this website before she set off called Normandic Static. I believe it was actually normandicstatic.com. She'd set it up. She was obviously wanted to do it professionally. As I've said, she wanted to do it full time. She was all in. And she decided that she was going to do this website on the way. While she was out traveling, she could work on it and, it would be perfect. And that is what she did. So her first Instagram post from the trip was actually with Brian, and it was on the 4th of July. And they would geotag it and sort of mark which park they were in. They took a lot of photos on the way through Colorado. They posted tons of pictures. They would sort of write down what they were doing and give people a little brief explanation of it. Then headed on to Utah, and they did the same thing. They were posting photos on Instagram of all these beautiful things, of them two just loving life, seeing all these sights that possibly not many people have been able to see. And again, you can just see how happy she looks and how happy he looks. She was just totally loving life, doing something absolutely amazing and seeing all these stunning places. And honestly, she just looked so happy. Like, so happy. At some point during this journey, Gabby did not post on Instagram for 12 days. It is not known why, whether she just didn't get service or something like that. And obviously just possibly couldn't post as a result of that. We're not sure on that one. But she didn't actually post for 12 days. But then she began posting again from Grand County, Utah, where she posted about hiking up this popular trail and seeing this bridge. I can't remember the name of the bridge. I'll put a picture up. I just want to say here, actually, before I go any further, I'm going to try and do this as things happened that we know of. So it might get a little bit higgledy-piggledy in a sense. I just hope that you guys can keep up. I've tried my best with this case. It is all over the place in certain aspects because more information is just coming out all the time. So this information wasn't actually found out until much later. But on the 17th of August, Brian actually flew back to Florida from Salt Lake City. So he went back to apparently close up a storage locker that they had because they wanted to save money and possibly extend their trip. So he went back to do that and get some personal items. He spent a few days with family there and then returned to Gabby on the 23rd of August. So moving on from like the 17th of August, on the 19th, they posted on their YouTube channel. Gabby had created one in, I believe, 2013, but never actually done anything on it. And then whilst they was on their trip, they made a video for that, and her YouTube channel is called Nomadic Static, and they posted, I believe it's like an 8-minute long video. It was the first video on the channel, and from what I could find, I couldn't find it anymore, so it may be the only one. But I found it a bit odd. At the end of the video, there's like an end screen credit, and then it comes up video not available. So I don't know what that was, whether they did have another video on and it got deleted, or whether it was just linking to another video that has since been deleted. I do not know, but I only found the one video when I looked into it. But anyway, it's a beautiful vlog. I will put it in here. Not all of it, obviously. It's like 8 minutes long, but it just shows them their travels, how much they're enjoying themselves, basically. And you can truly see that. You can truly see that they both look very happy. Not that I'm commenting anything here, but obviously on the outside they look very happy. Whether that was the case on the inside, who knows. And it makes it more believable that their relationship got strained with what happened, basically.
Hello, and good morning. It is really nice and sunny today. Brian's stretching, doing some morning yoga.
We are right outside Capitol Reef right now in a free dispersed camp spot, and we've been lucky so far at all the places we've stayed, but I'd say this is one of the best so far.
Around this time, she's also still posting on her Instagram, but she makes this post and she doesn't geotag it, and she doesn't put down the park name, which she had done with literally every other one that she had posted. So people did find that really strange, and it was speculated upon a lot. But anyway, they carry on posting. At one point during the trip, they ended up staying in a hotel, and Gabby actually FaceTimed her mother, which I believe she did whenever she could. During this conversation, she said that they were now leaving Utah and they were gonna make their journey to Grand Teton National Park, which is in Wyoming, and that is, I believe, over a 5-hour drive. And then they were going to go on to Yellowstone, which is a further hour from that national park. On the 25th of August, Gabby posted these beautiful photos on Instagram. Unfortunately, this would be her very last Instagram post. And people have speculated about these a lot. So I can't comment on this because, I just don't know. But this is what people have speculated. They have speculated that in this photo, her hair looks shorter. She is also not wearing hiking gear. So a lot of people do believe that these photos were not taken on that day. That possibly they were older photos that she had just posted for some reason. Instead of taking a photo of where she was or whatever, she just posted these instead because they were already there and ready. And I don't know, that's people's speculation that they weren't actually from there and then kind of thing. It just begged the question in a lot of people's minds as to how recent those photos were. The next day, Gabby sends a text to her mum, who believes that she is now in Teton National Park because that's where she said she was going. They were leaving. It was a 5-hour drive. This is now the next day. They're probably there at that time. 2 days after that, she receives another text off Gabby. And then on the 30th of August would be the final text that she receives off her daughter. And it sparked something straight away. It sparked worry straight away because the message she received was not like Gabby at all. And eventually, she did actually believe that it wasn't even sent by Gabby. But this text message read, "No service in Yosemite." And again, it's not something Gabby would have normally sort of sent. She had also stopped posting on Instagram at that time too. So her parents were worried. When they tried to contact her after that, they got no response. Gabby did not try to contact them. She did not try to contact friends. There was just nothing. So I've also seen that there was a text sent to one of her parents. I am not sure which. I just sort of fleetingly read this. I'm not sure too much of the details on it. Apparently, her grandfather was called Stan, and she sent a text. It came from her phone, and it said something along the lines of, "Can you help Stan?" She mentioned her granddad's name as Stan, and normally she'd call him Granddad. So they honestly believed that this text also was not sent by Gabby, because why would she call her granddad Stan when she never ever has before? It was very, very strange. There's still a lot of questions in this case that may never be answered, especially with the information we now know, which obviously I will get into when we get further through the case. So Nicole is receiving no word from Gabby. She rings Joe and her stepmom, telling them that they haven't heard anything off Gabby for a while. She stopped posting. It's not like her. There's something wrong. They then continue to call Brian's parents, because at that time they not only thought that there was something wrong with Gabby, that Brian too, because they were both together, they were both engaged to get married, and they've both gone on this trip together. So if Gabby's missing, then surely Brian's missing too. Like, there's something going on, and surely it would involve both of them. So she tries to ring Brian's parents to see whether they've heard anything off Gabby and Brian, but they just ignore them. They get nothing back. They do not respond at all. Literally nothing. And of course, they're still trying to contact Gabby and Brian too, but they receive nothing on that front either. Now, something that wouldn't actually be found out until later is that Brian was actually already back home in Florida. So yeah, you heard that right. He had come home in Gabby's van, because the van did belong to Gabby, without her. So all of that time that Nicole and all of the rest of the family have been trying to contact Gabby, been trying to contact Brian, been trying to contact his parents, he was home. And they were just completely ignoring him. Which is really, really strange. I cannot comprehend as to why anyone would do that unless something had happened. Something that they wanted to keep a secret, essentially. That is just my opinion, obviously. But that's what I got for it as this case was coming out. We're now on the 10th of September. Nicole actually speaks to the police because she is so worried about Gabby. She's not heard of her, for so long now. And it was very unusual. The next day, on the 11th of September, at around 7 p.m, just before 7 p.m, I believe, that is when she officially reports her daughter as missing. She said initially that the first call to the police, she didn't really think that they took her too seriously and that they weren't worried initially, and that her concerns were just sort of brushed over. Unfortunately, that's what she felt. And it was after this so she reported her daughter as missing, and probably mentioned Brian too, that she was with a fiance on a trip, etc. And that is when they told her that actually Brian was home in Florida and he had been there for like 10 days, which is just, I can't even comprehend how she must have felt in that moment. To know that she's been worried about both of them and Brian's been home all along without Gabby and everyone's been ignoring her. Can you even imagine that? It just doesn't make sense to anyone, especially not a parent, like, at all. You would think that a parent would try and help another parent out to alleviate their worry, because obviously if it was their child, they would be worried. And yet Brian's parents didn't speak to anyone. I'm not trying to put a load of flack on Brian's parents because they have had so much throughout this case already. They were under a lot of criticism and still are. But, you know, this is what happened. They did ignore him. And so what else can you say on that? So Northport police were the ones that took on the case, the missing persons case. They go around to Brian's house and they try and interview him. But when they get there, his parents refuse to let them. They did, however, take Gabby's van into custody because, again, he had come back in that van. And so they took that in for processing. The FBI would also get involved very quickly in this case because Gabby was missing and it was like a multi-state thing. She could have been in any of the states. They do not know where she actually went missing, especially with Brian, who was potentially the last person to see her, not talking. So they just did not have a clue at that point, and so the FBI would get involved. Police did try again with Brian, but he claimed the Fifth. He has the right to remain silent. It is the Fifth Amendment. And when they approached him, the family just basically handed them sort of their lawyer's details and basically were not speaking at all, none of them. And again, personally, as well as probably millions of other people around the world, found that totally insane. Brian was acting really suspicious. To say that Gabby was the woman that he loved, that they were engaged and they were going to get married, she was missing and he was at home lawyering up and not speaking to anyone. Something wasn't right, and boy did the entire nation know it. As many of you may already know, this case has been huge in the media now and still is. Everyone thought this behaviour was very strange, myself included. I just couldn't wrap my head around, if he was innocent, why he would not want to speak to anyone about anything. Like, I get sometimes, okay, put it out there that some people do believe that maybe because the spouse is always the first to be looked into, that maybe they would get it pinned on them. But I mean, you look more guilty if you don't speak to them at all. Seriously, he was looking really guilty at this point. So it just honestly did not make sense to me, at least. And a lot of other people, let's face it. Brian's family completely refused to cooperate with the investigation into Gabby's disappearance, including Brian, despite the fact that, you know, he was with her. They went on this trip together. Surely he must know where she is, or at the very least, the last point that he saw that if they had an argument and they split up and they separated, for starters, why did he take Gabby's van? Because that was her van. And then he left her there. Okay, but if that was the case and they ended up splitting up, why was he not telling them at the very least where he saw her last? He was just telling them nothing. So Gabby's family are trying to talk to the Laundrie family. They are saying nothing, and they basically forward all questions through their lawyer. The lawyer basically said that normally the law tries to blame the intimate partner in these cases, and might I add, on just a personal note, through doing true crime and researching these cases, that's because it normally is. A lot of the time, they fall under suspicion because they have normally done it. So yes, straight away they do look into the spouse because so often it is the spouse. Not all the time, I'm not saying that. And if it is not the spouse, they do rule them out and then hopefully find out who it is. But a lot of the time it is, unfortunately. As sad as that sounds, it is true. So whilst the Laundrie family are not saying anything to anyone, keeping anything that they know to themselves, obviously the Petito family are freaking devastated. They are just trying to find their little girl. She was 22 and they just wanted to know where she was, if she was maybe injured, maybe she was out there somewhere and she needed help. They just needed to find her. And the whole country was out looking for Gabby too. Again, nobody could understand why the Laundrie family wasn't helping at all. Why did he come back with her van without her? Why wouldn't he tell them where he saw her last? He did release a statement through his lawyer. He did actually do that, but it just basically said that he was staying in the background on this one, which just absolutely mind-blowing. Brian had a sister called Cassie, and she actually would talk to the police. Now, initially, there were some discrepancies in her story. She said that she hadn't seen Brian, but it was later proved that she, after, you know, sort of all of September, but then it was later proved that she actually did. And then she said that it was sort of a mishap and that she was misunderstood on that fact. I'm not going to get too much into that, but it seems like she was the only one that was willing to come forward and talk out of the Laundrie family when everyone else was sort of just hiding away. Gabby's family sent out this open letter pleading for the Laundrie family to tell them something, anything. They were saying along the lines of what I've said before, like, they are a parent. Brian is their son. Can you imagine how you would feel if the roles were reversed and Brian was the one missing and we weren't telling you anything? Do you know what I mean? They were just trying to plead with them and beg them to say something, and they still just didn't. And I mean, this case was massive, is massive. It blew up in the media. You had media outlets outside of the Laundrie household at all times, pretty much. Well, not all the time, obviously, but most of the time. There were people outside protesting, hammering signs into the lawn. There was the police there on sort of surveillance of the family home. There was a ton of people out there, and everyone was keeping an eye on that house, as well as still trying to find Gabby. So then we get to the 15th of September, and this is when police released some footage. I believe it was Moab police released some footage that they had taken of Gabby and Brian on the 12th of August in Moab, Utah. Basically, how it all began was a witness saw the couple arguing and actually being physical. They said that they saw a male push and slap a female, grab her face, and sort of run up and down and then jump back in the car and drive off. And they reported it as a possible case of domestic violence.
Hi, I'm calling. I'm right on the corner of Main Street by Moonflower, and we're driving by, and I'd like to report a domestic dispute. We drove by, and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and they drove off.
All right, I will let somebody know. Thank you.
The responding officer found the van driving 45 in a 15 zone, so obviously speeding, and then he puts his sort of lights on to pull this van over, and this van crosses the double yellows to go into the right lane, which is not allowed also, and hits the curb, and so they then pull over. The entire video is well over an hour long, I believe like an hour and 15 minutes long, and there was 2 of them released. The second one wasn't released until much later, but the first one, and I've watched them both in their entirety, but the first one shows the police officer getting out of the car, Brian is driving, Gabby's in the passenger seat, and she is crying her eyeballs out. She is sort of unconsolable.
You're crying.
I'm sorry, we've just been fighting this morning. Some personal issues.
It was a long day. We were camping yesterday, and camping got flies and stuff.
Gabby went on to say that it was her fault. She took the blame for it straight away. It was her fault as to why they had hit the curb, because she was distracting him from driving.
I was distracting him from driving, I'm sorry.
Obviously, you can go and watch this entire thing yourself. I'm not going to put it all in. I'm going to put little bits of clips in, you know. But as a general gist of things, both Brian and Gabby apparently suffered from anxiety. Gabby was very anxious, like a lot of the time. And they'd been traveling for months now, living together in a small little space. And they had been doing sort of niggly things that have just been building up over time. And that basically she was getting really angry. Now, she actually admitted to getting angry. And she said that she had OCD, although I do believe, I did read somewhere that she's never been officially diagnosed with it. It's just something a lot of people recognize, like that they have a bit of OCD because they want things in a certain way, or they want things tidy. So she said that she had OCD, that she was trying to sort out the back of the van, and she was just getting really angry, and sometimes she can come across as being quite mad.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just, some days I have really bad OCD, and okay. I was just cleaning and straightening up the back of the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean, because sometimes I have OCD, and sometimes I just get really frustrated, not like mean towards him, I just like, I guess my vibe is like, I am like in a bad mood.
Brian locked the car door of the passenger side of her van, bearing in mind, don't forget this fact, it's her van. He locked her out. He locked the passenger door, and she was just trying to get in. They had an argument, and he wanted her to cool off. So he puts her backpack outside of the car. I don't know why. But he puts it around the back and tells her to go away and cool off. She doesn't want to, so he's pushing her. And she ends up, I believe, slapping him. But Brian at some point does actually grab her face, which is what the witness saw as well, and grabs her arm to stop her from hitting him. She then ends up eventually climbing through the driver's side window to get into the car, because that's the only way she can get in. He's locked the other side of the door and he's not letting her in. So she climbs through the window, goes over to the passenger side, and then they drive off.
I've been fighting all morning, and he wouldn't let me in the car before. And then
Why wouldn't he let you in the car? Because of
told
your
me
OCD?
told me I needed to calm down. Yeah, but I'm perfectly calm. I'm calm all the time.
Again, Gabby went on to say that they'd had a bad day, that they'd been fighting all day because she had OCD, and that she was in a bad mood. She instantly took all of the blame, basically.
She gets worked up sometimes, and I try and really distance myself from her. So like I locked the car and I walked away from her. What happened this morning is that she's trying to start up like her own little website blog and everything. So I give her time. And we really had a nice morning, if anything, but she just got worked up because we were trying to get going and get our day going.
They end up going back to Brian and have a chat with him, and the officer finds that he has some scratches on his face, some scratches on his arm, and the officer goes on to ask about those.
Tell me about those scratches on your face.
She had a cell phone in her hand. That's why I was pushing her away, because she wanted I locked the keys so I could walk away. I said, let's just take a breather and let's not go anywhere. Let's just calm down for a minute because she was getting a little worked up. And then she had her phone and was trying to get the keys from me, so I got in the way. I was just trying to, I know I shouldn't push, but I was just trying to push her away to go, let's just take a minute, step back and breathe. And she got me with her phone.
Gabby admits to hitting Brian, but nothing was ever really said about the marks that Gabby had. It wasn't actually shown until the other footage came out. But in that other footage of the second officer, you can see him talking to Gabby, and he finds that she has a bruise on her arm and she has a mark on, like a scratch on her cheek, and she explains that Brian had grabbed her face and he had dug his nail in, basically hard enough to scratch her face. But nothing was ever really mentioned about the injuries that Gabby had gotten, only the scratches that Brian had gotten. So essentially, they saw Gabby as the aggressor, Brian as the victim, and that they were gonna have to charge Gabby with domestic abuse. The officer asked Brian why he hit the curb. He says that Gabby grabbed hold of the steering wheel, yanked it to the side, and that is why he hit the curb.
You want to tell me about hitting that curb?
Hitting the curb was her grabbing the wheel.
She grabbed the wheel?
Yeah, she said, I can't believe we're getting pulled over, and then she grabbed the wheel.
When the same question was asked of Gabby, she told them that it was probably her fault because she was distracting him, but she had punched him in the arm. Now, she said the reason that she punched him in the arm was because she had saw the lights of the police car and was basically like, you idiot. Do you know what I mean? Just a little sort of punch in the arm to say, oh my God, we're getting pulled over by the police. I cannot believe it. You are so stupid. Kind of thing. That is what she said, okay? She said that she did not grab the steering wheel and swerve to the side with it.
Quick question. You said you were hitting him in the arm. Did you grab the steering wheel?
No, I didn't.
You did not touch the steering wheel?
I didn't touch the steering wheel, but only for like a second, because I just saw the lights come on, and it was more just like, you're an idiot.
But did you grab the steering wheel and
No.
swerve or anything like that?
No. I didn't touch the steering wheel at all.
What I don't understand from that is that they just instantly believe Brian. Like, Gabby's there saying that she did not do that, and they just believed that Brian. Throughout this entire thing, you will see that they believe Brian was the victim and not the aggressor. During this entire time, the cop wrote in his report after, saying that Gabby did not stop crying and she continued to wipe tears away from her face. You've got that side of it where Gabby is literally does not stop crying, and then you've got Brian who does not stop talking, seems actually hyper, and one of the officers does actually ask him that, like, are you always this hyper? Because he literally does not stop talking. And he's laughing and joking with them, and then you've got Gabby who's crying her eyes out. She's distressed, she's distraught, and he's just giggling away. Brian goes on to say how he does not want Gabby to get charged. You know, he doesn't want all these things to happen. He will not press any charges. But the cops are going on about how they have to abide the law, that any form of domestic abuse has to go this way. They eventually do ring a supervisor and discuss their options, and they come up with a plan. They also discussed different things about, like, you know how I said about the steering wheel earlier? This is what the officers actually came to the conclusion of about that steering wheel incident.
Too, to the victim, which is him.
Right, and I'm getting conflicting stories about why they hit the curb up here.
What did he say why he hit the curb?
He said that she grabbed the wheel and turned it real hard. She said that she was hitting him in the arm. So
sounds legit. I mean, I'm sure if I'm driving and my arm's on the wheel and I'm getting hit in the arm, I'm probably pulling out the wheel.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was a little of both, and usually the truth is somewhere in between. He's probably trying not to.
So eventually, after looking at the legislation and ringing up a supervisor, they did decide how they had sort of attacked each other did not fit the law. And so as a result of that, they could not press charges against them, but they did decide that they were going to split the couple up. Now, they already had the wheels in motion at that point of getting Brian a hotel. As the victim, he was the one who was going to get a hotel because they were going to have to split them up. The other option would be to put Gabby in jail, which they did not want to do. So they had to split them up, and it was going to be difficult because they obviously lived in the same van. So the plan was get him in like a domestic abuse sort of company that deals with that and gets hotels for him. So that's what they were in the process of doing, and that is what they did. They got Brian the hotel. They advised that he stay there, that they split up for the night, and Gabby gets the van. That they do not contact each other, they do not talk, they chill out, they have a break from each other, and then obviously they can just meet up the next day if they want to. Now, the entire thing's been criticised a lot by people, by experts even, who say that there were so many red flags in that video. They claim that Gabby looked like she was terrorised to not say anything to the police, and that it was clear domestic abuse on his part, with Gabby being the victim, not Brian. I am by no means an expert on any of that, and I'm not going to pretend that I am. But the experts, that is what some experts have actually said. So to them, it looks like Brian was abusive to Gabby, possibly, and that they were maybe in an abusive relationship, maybe just the start of it, who knows, but he was the abuser, not Gabby. But they just didn't see it like that, and they have got a lot of flack for that. Again, I don't know, I'm not commenting on it because I'm no expert, I mean, come on, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Do you think that Gabby was the abuser or that Brian was the abuser? So that was the video. I've put it there because it wasn't released until later, but it happened in August, the 12th of August. Now let's jump back to the 14th of September. Joel, Gabby's dad, flies out to Wyoming to her last known location that they are aware of, which was the Grand Teton National Park, and he is out there looking for her, doing everything he can. Then the next morning, Brian was actually named as a person of interest in the disappearance of Gabby Petito. Now, a person of interest is very, very different from a suspect. A suspect means that they have evidence to try and to name him a suspect. But they didn't have any evidence, they didn't have anybody, they didn't know where Gabby was, whether she was alive or not, they had nothing. And so he was just a person of interest. Once more, the Laundrie family did not help at all. The police were out there searching for her, they had been for days, weeks. But the problem was that they didn't really have a clue where she was last. For all they knew where she was last known to be, but for all they knew, she could have moved on from that spot. They could have literally drove anywhere from there and been anywhere, and so it was so difficult to try and find her. The media around this case grew massively after that police footage was released, and internet sleuths all over the world were looking into this case. They were trying to pin down anything they could, find any information that they could just to try and help in this case, and a lot of that actually happened on TikTok. Some witnesses did come forward later on to say that they had seen the couple in a Tex-Mex restaurant and they were arguing, well, not they, Brian was arguing with members of the staff there. Obviously that was being looked into to confirm as to whether it was actually true, because some people are mistaken, some people unfortunately do give false information on these things. So, you know, they had to confirm that it was actually a fact. According to witnesses, they saw Brian argue with several members of staff. He kept coming in and out of the building, was very, very angry, and Gabby was crying. She was trying to get him to leave, but I believe he wasn't having any of it. I don't know what the argument was about or anything like that. Just that he was very angry and she was very upset. This was later confirmed to be true, and it would be one of the last sightings of Gabby. So her family at this point are hoping and praying, as everyone was, that they would find her safe. They were, you know, they were thinking or hoping along the lines that maybe she was out there and she just needed help. Maybe, you know, she was injured or something. She was still out there. They would find her. And there was also a lot of speculation around this case. So I'm not going to get into all of it because it is just that. It's just speculation. But one of the main things that was speculated upon was that there was a double murder of this newlywed couple. And it was around the same area that Gabby was known to be in. It was of Kylan Schultz. It was of Kylan Schultz and Crystal Turner, who were traveling around Grand Utah County, as I said, in the same area. They were found dead at a campsite on the 18th of August. One of the girls actually worked at the co-op that they were seen arguing outside of, and so, you know, they knew that they were in the area at the time. It turned into this huge thing about serial killers and speculation as to whether, you know, the person that had murdered these girls murdered Gabby or something like that. Anyway, it turns out that the police came forward to say that there was actually no connection. So that just goes to show, like, all of this speculation around this case, you know, not all of it is a fact. Some of it has proven to be a fact, but a lot of it is just that, just speculation. So now we get to the 17th of September, right? Brian's family ring up the FBI and say that they want to talk. Now, it's just unbelievable, but the FBI thinking, fantastic, we might finally be, you know, getting somewhere. We might finally be able to find where Gabby was last seen. But they didn't want to talk about Gabby. No, they wanted to talk about Brian because, you know, they hadn't actually seen him since the 14th. So 3 days ago, he went off to a hike in the Charlton Reserve and he had not returned. He picked up his backpack, he took the silver Mustang, and off he went, and he just never came back. Why they did not report it sooner, I do not know, but they had no concerns over Gabby, just of their son. And I mean, I get it, he is their child and they love him unconditionally, I get that. The Charlton Reserve is like a 13-minute journey, I believe, away from the house. No, 30 miles, sorry, it's not minutes, miles. And it's absolutely freaking massive. It's like 24,000 acres. Above that, it has got numerous hiking trails. It is just huge. And he apparently took a backpack and off he went. He was a survivalist. He was a minimalist, you know. Who knows how long he could survive out there, but he was gone and he just didn't come back. It did later come out that they had actually got the date wrong. That it wasn't the 14th that he left, it was actually the 13th, which put a lot of flack on the parents again. And they just didn't mention the fact that Gabby was missing at all. They were just more concerned with Brian being missing. And so the news broke to the world. Not only was Gabby missing, Brian was also now missing too. And so the search began for him. On the 18th of September, 50 officers went to the reserve to begin their search. Bearing in mind, it is massive. It is filled with alligators, snakes. At that point, the weather had been pretty bad and a lot of it was underwater. It was not a good hike to be taking. And the search was just a massive undertaking, with many places that they couldn't even go to because of that fact. It was actually estimated that when it began, about 75% of it was in fact underwater. And so obviously they're trying to clear like the dry areas of it. And then they're thinking in the reality, how long could Brian last out there? He literally took a backpack. You know, he didn't have anything else, surely the plan wasn't for him to just try and survive out there for a long period of time, unless he managed to go in there and go and get some supplies. I just don't know. But if you're keeping stum because your fiance has gone missing, right? You are not saying a word, your family's not saying a word, and then all of a sudden you go hiking and just don't come back. It just looks really, really bad for Brian. And unless he actually was guilty, I don't understand why he did that. Personal opinion, obviously I'm not saying he is guilty. Innocent until proven guilty and all that lot, but I just, why? Why would anyone do that? I do not understand. Surely an innocent person would not do that. Surely an innocent person would not do anything that Brian did. Again, no accusations here from me. Please don't take that as one. Just my thoughts on it. And my thoughts as this case progressed in the news and as I was getting updated on it. Again, it was all over the media. You know, people were coming forward to say that they thought they'd seen Brian. There was numerous tips, sightings, phone calls, everything. A photo came through to say that a guy thought that he had captured Brian on his day camera. And to be quite honest, it does actually look like Brian. Police then announced that they were finally narrowing down the search area for Gabby. They had narrowed it down to a campsite called Spread Creek, and that was an area in the Grand Teton National Park. So they began reaching out for anybody that may have been in the area around the time that Gabby went missing to think back. Did they see anything? Did they record anything? Do they know anything? Because they believe that the couple was in that area around that time. So please, please, please think. Please just send in any information you have. Somebody on TikTok then came forward to say that she and her boyfriend had actually picked up Brian. There's a lot of speculation around it, and I don't believe that this has actually been verified yet. I'm not sure. It might have been by now, but from my understanding, it hasn't been. But basically, he was on his own. He said that he had been out hiking without his girlfriend, without his fiance. She was back doing a blog and working on that. He went hiking alone, and that he was trying to make his way to Jackson. Now, apparently, this couple were going to Jackson, but they were going to some place called Jackson Hole. I mean, I'm not from America. I don't have a clue where all these places are. But this Jackson Hole is often referred to people who know it by Jackson. And so they called it Jackson. When he said he was going to Jackson, he jumped in and they said they would give him a lift. But they meant Jackson Hole, not Jackson. I don't know. When he actually found out that they were going to Jackson Hole and not Jackson, he was like, nope, stop the car. I need to get out right now. And he made them stop and he got out of the car. He then said that he was going to hitchhike to try and make his way to Jackson. And it is just really, really wondered as to why he did not want to go to Jackson Hole and why he like literally jumped out of that car straight away. Again, please let me know if this has been verified because I am not sure. But the person doing this TikTok said that she did not want to do this for fame and for notoriety on the case. She wanted to do it because he said he was going out hitchhiking the rest of the way and they wanted somebody else to see whether anybody else had picked him up. And apparently somebody did confirm that they had picked him up. I have read somewhere, although I didn't fully look into that. I glanced it, which is why I do not know the information fully on it. But there was a report that somebody had picked him up. That woman from TikTok had picked him up from there. And then somebody did actually pick him up from that place. But I don't know where they took him to. So yeah, that's not very good information, is it? Anyway, moving on from that, some very vital information did come from a family. They have a YouTube channel called Red, White and Bethune. They are a family that, like Gabby's dream was, like they were doing, basically do van life. They were out in the camper, traveling around, camping, blah, blah, blah. They were doing all that, seeing all the sights. And they have a YouTube channel where they obviously record it all. And they were traveling down this dirt road. I believe they took this dirt road. It was around the back. It's not normally one that they would take, but they took it because apparently the views were a lot nicer that way. And so they go down there. This was around the time that Gabby and Brian were supposedly around that area. And they found that they were actually in that area. And they're traveling down this dirt road and they see this van, white van, very much similar to Gabby's, that had Florida plates on it. So this van was from Florida. They were from Florida. They're thinking like, oh wow, we could say hi to them. We're from the same place. That is why they made a mental note of it. But apparently the van looked dark. It looked like there was nobody there. So they just drove on. When it came out that the police were appealing for anybody in that area at the time, they recalled this van and they were trawling through the footage, trying to see as to whether they actually caught it on camera, and they did. They caught it on camera, they sent that into the police, and the police confirmed that that was Gabby's van. Now, when you see this footage, first of all, the doors actually look like they're open, but then as the car gets closer, they look like they're closed. There's been a lot of speculation, but either way, it was a massive thing in the case. Now, don't get me wrong, the police had already narrowed down that area. We don't know why, whether there was a tip, whether some information came forward that they had narrowed it down to the area. Who knows? I do not know. But that now gave them a more specific place to look in that area. And so that is what they did. They began the search, and then on the 19th of September, they came forward to say that they had found some remains near to the campsite and close to like this stream. There was evidence of a sort of campfire being there, and that's where someone had pitched up a tent, and that is where they found the remains. It was, let me just put in here, from where that van was recorded to be, it was literally a 5-minute walk from there. So, you know, it didn't take them long to find the body. They came forward and did a press conference because obviously this case was very high profile. So they came forward, they did a press conference to say that they had found some remains. The remains unfortunately did match the description of Gabby Petito, that her family had been informed, but obviously they needed to wait for 100% DNA confirmation to confirm that it was her. Now this obviously made a lot of people angry. They believed that they had now found Gabby's body. Obviously not confirmed yet, but it was very likely. And Brian, if he had done this, had just gotten away. He just literally walked out there, went for a hike, and he was now missing. And so people were questioning as to how that could happen. And the police just came back with basically that they had no evidence that he had done anything. They had no body, they had no evidence, and so he was not a suspect in anything because they didn't have anything on him. He was only a person of interest, and thus a free man. He could do what he wanted. If he wanted to get his passport and travel around the country, he could have done because he was a free man. The next day, because of this, they got a search warrant for the Laundrie household. They removed many items from it. They were there a long time, and they even took the silver Mustang, which they were then told that Brian had used to drive to go for its hike. This car was actually ticketed. It was parked in an area that some police officer came along, ticketed it, and said it needs to be removed by such date. And that was on the 14th, I believe, that ticket was made. And then his parents apparently went up looking for Brian. They found the car. They left it there because they figured that he may need it. And then when they went back up, the car was still there with the ticket on, and so they brought it home. So that was taken in for evidence too. After this, it was officially confirmed that the remains that they had found were that of 22-year-old Gabby Petito, and that her death was to be ruled a homicide. They obviously went on to do an autopsy. It took a very long time for the results of that to come out and come back, and not all of it has come out. They've kept most of it under wraps. The only thing that they have released eventually was that her cause of death was manual strangulation, stroke throttling, I believe. I think that's just strangulation, essentially. Not sure. With an estimation that she had died 3 to 4 weeks before her body was found. Her family were obviously beyond devastated. They did a press conference, and in that they were just so amazing and inspiring. They went on how they said about how they didn't want Gabby's name to be taken in vain, that they wanted to help other people. They were starting something called the Gabby Petito Foundation, and that was to try and help other people. I mean, they had literally just found out that they had lost their daughter, and they were out there vowing to help other people in the same situation as Gabby. And I find that personally amazing. It's so upsetting to watch that press conference. It really is, because honestly, can you imagine losing your child and then going out there and saying that you're going to help all these other people? as soon as, you know, sometimes it takes them a while, sometimes people will do it months after, but they were literally there days after finding that out, and that's just so amazing. On the 22nd of September, an arrest warrant was issued for Brian, but it may not have been the arrest warrant that you are all thinking of. So it wasn't to do with Gabby's murder. It was to do with bank fraud. Essentially, they had footage of Brian, I believe, withdrawing about $1,000 from Gabrielle's account without her there. You know, after I think it was after she went missing. So obviously without her consent. And so that was what the warrant was for. But this warrant meant that they could arrest him and keep him whilst they tried to gather enough evidence to see whether he had actually murdered her. It was for that, essentially. It meant that they could get him into custody. I mean, if they could find him, because he was still missing. And so the manhunt, which it could now be called, initially Brian was a missing person because, you know, they didn't have a arrest warrant out for him. He was just a person of interest. But now they had an arrest warrant, and it could now be called a manhunt. So the manhunt for Brian continued. And it was massive. And I mean, even Dog the Bounty Hunter got involved. And I'm sure most of you know who Dog the Bounty Hunter is. He's 68 years old. He's called Dwayne Chapman. And he has lots of TV shows and reality TV shows where he hunts people. And even he was on the case, him and his family, in his franchise, all of his contacts that he had, all of everything that he had, he worked with the police, and they were out looking for Brian too. He even ended up adding $10,000 onto the reward money, which, get this, was a staggering $170,000 at that time, after he added the 10. And whoever sort of came forward with a lead that would result in Brian's capture would get that reward money, which is kind of insane. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a reward money that big in the cases that I've done. There probably has been reward monies bigger or that big, but I personally have not seen any. That is the biggest I've seen, and it blew my mind. And it might even be bigger now, but at the time of him adding the $10,000 on, that is what it was. And it was through donations that were just coming in from everywhere by all these different people who just wanted to help, which is amazing. Numerous tips came in and sightings of 24-year-old Brian, who is apparently freaking everywhere at this point. You know, he's there, he's miles away. Obviously, all of them weren't true. Somebody remotely looks like him, you're gonna think it's him, kind of thing, if you don't really know him that well. And there was a lot of sightings along the Appalachian Trail, and obviously the FBI said that they were looking into all of these. Around this time is when the second lot of footage from the police officers was released. As I said earlier, they have released the 2 lots of footage. This was the time that they released the second one. It was about 45 minutes long, and it showed a different side to it, essentially, because one was asking questions over there, this one was asking questions over here, and it just showed sort of the whole story this time. At the beginning of the footage, it just kind of shows when he first pulls him over and Brian is like stuttering, he can't find his words. To me, at least personally, he looks nervous and like he doesn't know how to answer the questions. Some may even say guilty. Who knows?
How's it going?
How are you doing?
Good. Hey, we got a call about a male hitting a female and the 2 of them getting in this vehicle and taking off.
So I don't want to try and defend myself by saying anything here, but I pushed her away. She gets really worked up, and when she does, she swings, and she had her cell phone in her hand, so I was just trying to push her away. But
then this officer goes to Gabby, gets her side of the story. She says how they'd thrown stuff in the back, and she had OCD, and she was getting really stressed because of all the stuff that was everywhere, and that she was trying to apologize to Brian for being for her OCD and being in a bad mood, and how she's sort of getting mad over everything being messy.
I was just apologizing, but I guess I said it in like a mean tone, and he got really frustrated with me, and he locked me out of the car and told me to go take a breather, but I didn't want to take a breather.
The officer is then seen asking Gabby about the mark on her face, which I did mention a little bit earlier on.
Is there something on your cheek here? Looks like, did you get hit in the face? Kind of looks like something like hit you in the face. And then over on your arm, shoulder, right here. That's new, huh?
Well, to be honest, I definitely hit him first.
Where'd you hit him?
I slapped him in the face.
You slapped him first, and then just on his face?
And you get to kind of just shut up.
How many times did you slap
Bravo,
him?
Romeo, India, Alpha.
Just a couple.
And then what? And his reaction was to do what?
Grab
be
my
out of
arm
Florida.
until I really just happened.
He goes on to say how he had seen how a witness had claimed that he had seen Brian hit her. Later on in this video, he goes ahead and calls the witness to confirm what the witness said. Now, the witness that he actually calls, because I believe there was 2 of them, wasn't actually the one that initially called it in. So he did not see the same thing that the person who called saw. And then they obviously had a short discussion about what had happened. I mean, it goes on, and I'm not going to go into it all again. I've already talked about the first lot of footage that was said, but obviously if you want to go and watch them, I would advise you to do so. You can see it in its entirety, you can make your own judgments on it, but it does go on about her being the aggressor. She mentions that the mark on her face was painful. They just don't go on about Gabby's injuries, they go all on about Brian's injuries, about how the first witness said that a male was attacking a female, but then they just didn't really mention that after that. And I don't know, they just don't talk about any of that, like, at all. The witness that rang up said that they saw the male hit the female, grab the face, push, slap, all of that, but they just don't mention any of that. They literally just go on about Brian and his injuries and how Gabby is the aggressor. Yeah, honestly. Watch it. Please do watch it yourself and just make your own decision on it. Just a quick note, considering how this case actually went down, this section that the officer said kind of really broke my heart, and I just wanted to put this in here because honestly it seems like that is exactly how it played out.
Too many times women who are at risk want to go back to their abuser, they just wanted him to stop, and they don't want to have to be separated, they don't want him charged, they don't want him to go to jail, and then they end up getting worse and worse treatment, and then they end up getting killed.
There's been lots of interviews with Gabby's family. They even went on the show Dr. Phil, and I can't put anything in from Dr. Phil because Dr. Phil is very strict on copyright, so obviously I'm not going to put any of that in. But yeah, you could probably go and find that somewhere if you tried. There have been more interviews done with Brian's sister Cassie, where a lot of things were cleared up. She actually came out to speak to protesters on her lawn, and they recorded it, and they were very thankful that she came out to talk to them, because normally, you know, people would not do that. And she cleared up a few different things in her story, things like that. Like, for example, when she said that she didn't see Brian and it turned out that she did. Now, a lot of people don't believe what Cassie says. So Cassie said that she went on a trip with Brian after he came back with her kids. They spent this day out, not a trip, but they just had a day out, and that he was acting normal and that nothing happened, that he was just not acting suspicious whatsoever. A lot of people don't believe that. A lot of people believe that that trip consisted of Brian telling them what happened that day and what they were going to do from then on. Again, speculation. Please don't take that as fact. It is not. It is just what people believe happened. I've seen a video, an interview of a former FBI agent who has said that that is what she believes. I'm not saying that Cassie is lying personally. It's just what I've seen and what I've read, and you know, it could be true or it could not be true. At this point, we do not know. I do not know whether we will ever know. So again, the manhunt for Brian is continuing. People are questioning as to whether he's still alive, whether he can survive that long. You know, it was full of snakes, alligators, drenched. He had no food, no water, or very limited, if in fact any. And with all the flooded trails and stuff, you know, was he even still alive? Was he even still in the Charlton Reserve? Obviously, the reservation had been closed off to the public for a long time. On 6th of October, it was announced that they had actually asked Brian's father, Christopher, to help with the search efforts to possibly show them some trails. It came forward that they had actually found a campsite, and they were trying to ask Christopher as to whether it looked like one that Brian would have made. Like, you know, whether he thought that it was where Brian was or not. Then on the 20th of October, literally as I was researching this case and looking into recording it, I'm actually recording this on the 23rd, but as I was looking to record all of this, some new information came to light. Not far from his family home, something was found. The medical examiner was called along with cadaver dogs to visit the scene. Investigators were actually told the day before that Brian's parents were going to help in the search. I believe I may be wrong on this, but I believe I read that it had actually been opened up to the public so that the public could help, and that is when the parents came in. So the next day they go and they are looking around trails that they know that Brian is used to and would possibly frequent, and that was where they found possible items that may have belonged to Brian. They found a backpack and a notepad, no, that they did think belonged to Brian, sorry. Along with that, they also found some remains. They obviously had to figure out whether these remains were even human. I do not know what they found. I know they were skeletal remains. I mean, I guess they didn't find a skull or anything like that because they would have known it was human, so probably just a few bones here and there. I do not know. Not all the information has been released. It literally happened 3 days ago. But they were found in the Mayakachi, sorry if I said that wrong, Mayakachi Creek Environmental Park. And that area was previously underwater. So the water had receded and now these items were visible. It's neighbouring Charlton Reserve, and it's an area that previously his parents had said that Brian may have been, apparently, but again, it was underwater for a long time. Obviously, we were waiting on confirmation as to whether this was in fact Brian, which we got the very next day. On the 21st of October, it came to light that those remains that they had found were that of Brian Laundrie, as confirmed through dental records. Which obviously they must have found a skull then. I don't understand. Maybe they knew it was human remains and I got that wrong. I apologise if that's the case. But yeah, they proved that it was him. So after pretty much a 5-week hunt for Brian, he had been finally found, and it was believed that he had been deceased for quite a while. Obviously, this case is still ongoing. The only person of interest in Gabby's disappearance and murder was Brian. More information will obviously come out on this. Whether the police will release that they had information that could link Brian to her murder, we do not know. It does beg the question as to what Brian's parents actually knew though. And there's a lot of speculation as to whether they may face charges as a result of that. Again, I am not accusing them of anything. We have to wait and see. We have to find out what happens, and, you know, only the police and the correct authorities can do that. So I am not accusing them in any way, shape or form. But if they knew something and they hid it because they were protecting their son, then they will most likely face some form of charge. Whether it be, I don't know, like obstructing the course of justice, harboring like a suspect. I don't know whether they knew anything or not, but I just find it very strange that they kept everything to themselves and didn't speak to anyone and lawyered up, and the whole thing is just weird to me. Again, please don't take me as accusing them of anything. We will have to wait and see what happens. This case still has a lot of questions in it, and whether those will get answered, I do not know, especially with Brian now also being deceased. Maybe the police have a lot of more evidence that obviously they didn't share with the public, and that now Brian is also deceased. They may share that because they can't charge him. He is no longer here. So, I don't know, maybe we'll get some more clarity on this case as time goes on. But honestly, this case is just so heartbreaking all around. Like, Gabby was 22. She was a beautiful, young, spirited girl who just wanted to go out, make her mark on the world, see the beauties of it, and she lost her life. And then you've got Brian, who, I don't know whether he's guilty or not. I mean, I cannot say that, but he has also lost his life at 24. You've got the families who have lost their children. Brian's family have lost their child. Gabby's 2 families have lost their child, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking. Obviously, at this moment, we have no proof that Brian murdered Gabby. We just have to wait and see what happens. But that doesn't change the fact that all these families are grieving for the loss of their children. As this manhunt carried on for Brian, personally, this is just my opinion, how I felt during it all, I did not think that they would find him alive. I hoped that they would, obviously, you know, but I just figured that the more time went on, the less likely that would be, because he didn't have much with him, and just, I don't know, I just didn't feel like they would. And unfortunately, that did prove to be true. Another thing that got me, that made me really, really teary, was that the Gabby Foundation has actually been tweeting a lot recently, and what they want to do is they want to get Gabby's YouTube channel to 1 million subscribers, because Gabby had always dreamed of getting that gold plaque. I believe it's gold. And they want to do that for her in her memory. They want people to go over to the channel and subscribe. So please, please do. You know, it will take literally a second out of your time. I know I don't have like 1 million subscribers. I don't have hardly any subscribers myself. But if anybody's watching this could just spare, I don't know, a few minutes just to go over to the channel, Normandic Static, and just hit that subscribe button, because they can get that play button for Gabby. And it can be another memorial to her memory. It was something that she really wanted to do, and I just think that's so amazing to try and do that for her family. So please, please spread this far and wide and get that truck channel to 1 million subs. It would just be amazing for her memory and her family. Obviously, if anyone does have any more information on the case, please do contact the FBI on it. Even after everything that's happened and everything we now know, you know, there may still be some vital information out there, some missing pieces that the FBI could use in this case. They also have 2 fundraising accounts. Now, a lot of fakes are out there apparently, and if anybody would like to donate to those, I will put the links in the description as verified by the family. These are the only 2 that you can use. So, you know, if you want to donate any money, then use these 2 links, because that is what the family have verified. Obviously, you can also donate to the Gabby Petito Foundation. I will also leave a link of that in the description too, for anybody that would like to donate something to an amazing cause. The Gabby Foundation is just so amazing. Like, they set it up, they want to help other people that have found this, that may find themselves in a similar situation to Gabby, and it just honors her memory amazingly. And I just think a family are so strong, putting it up so quickly. So, you know, it's a great cause to donate to, in my opinion. But yeah, that is the end of the case so far. If we have any more big updates, I will put it as a comment, because I'm not going to make another video on this. You know, I've waited long enough for it. Well, I was going to do the video before we found out about Brian, obviously, but then as I'm getting closer to finishing the case, it actually came out about all that a couple of days ago, so I've included it. But this video is already long enough. There is so much more I could have put in, but I've tried to condense it a little bit, because I don't know how long this is going to end up, but I believe it's going to be quite a long one. I've been sat here recording for ages, so yeah, it's going to be a long one. So any more information I will put in a comment, a pinned comment that may come out, and yeah, keep your eyes open on this, ears open on this case. We'll see what happens with it from now on. But yeah, that is the end of the case. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Gabby Petito. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.